playful, how fun. The real meaning of playing piano is jouer in French. Debussy's Image Book 1, number 3, Mouvement cryptic Perpetuel. Perpetual motion in English for mouvement. Mouvement perpetuel. Written in the very early years of the 20th century, it's already announcing minimalist music by Adams and others, by using no more a motif, no more a theme, a pattern by itself. Originally, we have for the tonal system 7 tones. For the whole tone scale Debussy cherished, we have 6. For the pentatonic scale of Asia, there are 5. Now, there are also variations. We can have the full 5 plus 7 that creates the chromatic scale from Greek chroma, color, that is 12. Or we also have the possibility to have a mode that is called octotonic, which is tone, semitone, tone, semitone. And here he uses C major as a clean slate, Debussy, and then he uses like at the end, naturally it's not in C major, it's nowhere, floating, suspended, depending from a perfect cadence through a triton leading tone, tension release. It's perpetual untension. It's really something Debussy cherished but didn't get exclusive on it, because he uses the C major scale as well, diatonic as we call it. In the middle section he uses bitonal. He returns to the opening, he goes back to the C major. When I say bitonal, is because he has the F sharp ostinato, or repeated, or resonating, or continuous, which would be a dominant to this emerging from the flows of the F sharp waves, chorale, in loosely B or F sharp, but it's never centered on any tonalities, always elusive. It's more like paintings where you use for the Impressionist painters, and Debussy was not Impressionist in his eyes, symbolist composer because of the poetry. But in the same time period, you had these impressions of the landscapes that were not the fact of a photographic painting of it, though photography was at its rise with Nadar and in France, and the precision of the photography, even in black and white originally, replaced some of the portraits and the landscapes that were taken by painted by painters so precisely. And now the Impressionist painters painted by batches of colors, some things that from close up is blurred, and then from far away you can see the puzzle come together as a focus of the picture of the soul rather than the painting of the photographic reality. And I find that in the tonal, modal, chromatic, whole tonal treatment of the texture of the atmosphere by Debussy, we have chromatic, we have chords which are diminished, sevenths. We have dominant sevenths with inversions. So we have chords that are not functional, because you're not in D major, nor in... They're just there for the color effect, not for its functional tonic dominant hierarchy organized tonal system. And so the melodic line has to emerge from the flows of the F sharp ostinatos with a very softly harmonized coating. It helps to practice it with staccato legato to change the amount of tension that you put in the tip of the finger, or the cushion of the tip. More pressure on the pinky for right hand and thumb for left hand. And the stronger fingers, the grabbing fingers, 1, 2, softer, shorter, with pedal. You obtain that 3D effect. Plus these. So in order to create that very subtle fog, but clarity, but resonance, but precision, sounds all contradictory, because if you have too much pedal, it's drawn, it's blurry. And if you have not enough pedal or too briefly pedal, you lose the resonance. Of course, you could use middle pedal, which Debussy didn't use or have. Which isolates the resonance, compartments it. It's compartmented in only these and these separately. But the truth be said, even if it's an advantage on the modern piano to use the middle pedal for compartmental holding, Debussy, imagine, heard it on his own pianos of the time, the Pleyels des Erards of the 19th, early 20th century. So they were with some kind of harp resonance, with not so much dampers, and mostly only with the right foot pedal, which by shaking it or pumping it or vibratoing it, you keep the residue of the resonance like the tail of the comet. So it's less abrasive on the resonance. And you have to count very precisely because it's written in quarter notes, eighth notes for the chorale, and in triplets or sextuplets of 16th notes without the first for the ostinato. So you have layered texture, layered pedaling, and voiced chorale with melodic line leading from a pianissimo till the triple forte at the end of the second page of the 2 pages of the middle section. His prelude is called La Cathédrale Engloutie, the Sunken Cathedral, where you have out of the flows of this fantastic novel that he set in music or imitation or illustration of sounds of this cathedral that appears by rising when the waters recede in a tide that goes down. And so it's a little bit of the same effect in this middle section of Mouvement by Debussy in Image. Just introducing the middle section from the opening section to go back in our steps. Typical for later minimalists, he uses a pattern repeated many times, the triplet. And then he adds a melody. And the harmonies are there to signal the atmospheric feel. Warm and cold, or chill and cool, and then heat. Which introduces that famous middle section that I played for you. In the opening section, after the introduction of the other pattern of 3 notes, Ré, mi, fa, 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 Ré. He reaches a moment where he has a motivic element rather than a theme. And the continuum of the pattern of the repeated patterns of 3 notes, the perpetual motion, as we had perpetual motion in the middle section, F sharps. Here we have the DEFs, Ré, mi, fa, Ré, mi, fa, Ré, mi, fa, Ra. And then he adds a triplet of 8th notes. Some kind of, I think, I feel, I hear it, I always did, and matter of fact, imagination-wise, like some kind of exclamation, and then echoed. And he doesn't use thirds. He doesn't do. Because that would be too tonal or too modal in the major minor triads of the scale of C major. But he uses only the 5ths, almost medieval, like the Gregorian. Nor major nor minor, neutral, worshipping without the human passions, major or minor or diminished or augmented. So you don't have, of course. Therefore, that is why it's so exciting to have this overwhelmed for a moment, but with a continuous in the background, perpetual motion. You notice that I have a special fingering system, which is I play with the knuckle of the 3rd finger bent under the palm, so that I can have the middle note very projecting percussively, as I have with the tip of thumb and 5 for the octaves. So in this position, there it is, I do, which is more effective than with either bent second or straight second finger with the skin tip of the cushion. I mean, it's possible, but I find the other more percussive if that is what one wishes, because I find it more jubilant. So we are on C major scale, but we really never identified with a harmonic perfect cadence in C major. And then he introduces the dominant seventh on the tonic. But it's more like a first degree with the dominant seventh, which is minor seventh, but not as a dominant of F major. And when he does this incredibly driven rising of the scale, he uses the tetrachords, which in major are symmetrical. Tone, tone, semitone, tone, semitone. And he clusters the first two to fit them in his sextuplets of double triplets. Not, which he could have if he had written, obviously, 8/32. But the point is that it allows for this quasi-effect of glissando with the pedal and the clusters inside, combining, that gives that pulse. Typical of Debussy, he introduces something unexpected, like in the first movement of this series of Images. An intriguing new element that he will do nothing with, but it's just there to distract or to create a surprise startle moment. And so then the opening, though, I must confess, is notated by Debussy differently than perhaps he imagined it in terms of the intent. And that is often the case, I find, both 50 years of teaching, that the notation is a filter that is not always pure, leading us, so to say, purely by retrofitting to the original intent of the composer when it was in his heart or head, or both, or hers, and then it materialized through signs on the paper, and then we take that scroll or this document or this map, and we have to figure out exactly how to handle it. And the choice of how to handle the hand, which part plays which, especially in this Mouvement, where the two hands play very much over each other in a sort of a combination of patterns, where you have the right hand D, E, F, and coded by the CG of the of the fifth. And then he wrote it for the left hand, and then the fifths in the right hand, and I think is more practical, or in a way helps the evenness of the independence of the hands, but the evenness of the solution, to keep it in the same hand, which he starts in the right hand, and then to do, and then put the fifths in the left hand. Same here, instead of, not that it's not possible, it's just that I think it's more practical in order to create that sense of continuous flow, of continuous evenness of this perpetual motion, this kind of magical engine that never ends, never stops. It constantly regenerates itself. Well, it's a way of handling it. And then when he gets to the chord after the recap, he chooses this time no more the C major scale, but the whole tone scale. I mean, Gabriel Dupont and many other composers of the time, even my teacher, Mademoiselle Boulanger, also composed, and Lily, her sister. The most composers around the turn of the 20th century were using the whole tone as a coloristic effect of harmonic, I would say, going away from the tonal hierarchy of the dominant tonic. It's just sort of parallel chords that float. And I guess his desire to do this coloristically was more floating because it's full tone than if it were in C major with the tones and semitones. You be the judge. I don't think it would have been that bad, but in any case, that's why he chose what he did. That's why composers hear what we didn't hear. That's why we play what they heard before they notated it, and through the notation of their intent, we try to reconnect to what was their original idea of colors, and therefore pedaling. The pedaling is something so specific to the piano because you have the precision of the hammer articulation. And then you have at the same time the blur by 3 or by 6 or by 9. So this dosages is like a cook or a chef making a sauce, how you put the ingredients to get that final taste, because it's all in the proportions of the ingredients, and the pedal, the resonance, the acoustic of the whole, the instrument type resonance itself either enhances, either overwhelms, because you want to keep the clarity of the precision while you want to have a little bit of halo with the pedal. People use semi-pedals, half pedals, quarter pedals. I don't know that is always so effective because not all pianos, of course, for any situation, in any case, are exactly organized the same way for their action. So some respond with a heavier pedal, some with more on the edge. But you have to test until you find what is your best inner ear imagination of what you want the soundscape to be in this ephemeral construction of resonances. To me, it's very liquid, or perhaps very porous. You hear more the resonances of the sounds than the sounds plug themselves solidly. It almost feels like he was trying to organize the order of or imitation of the order of the natural harmonics. The octave, the fifth, which is the 12th, and then the third major one that comes on top. And here it's with a full tone scale. He obtains some kind of similar effect, holding the bass deep, with the ostinato in the top, and then the left hand spanning around the keyboard. So this resonance of that has to fade away in the playing. he writes a fermata on the high E, but it's so weak, it's thin and short in decay that you hear more the C, which is thick and longer because of the longer, larger strings. So then that's why it's played short, and this is supposed to be held, but it doesn't resonate. So in fact, they both faint or basically disappeared. They fade away rather than disappear or decay. What fun to have something so refreshing, so modern, beyond its already over 100 years from the composition, that remains challenging and sensorial and colorful and tasteful as taste buds are concerned. It triggers imaginations with the pedal more than an orchestra could do because of the fact that the piano is percussive with the pedal that enhances the resonance. And it somehow comes out differently every time. Of course, an orchestra in a different orchestra hall will sound differently because of the acoustics. The piano depends a little less on the acoustics because of the pedal, but nevertheless, it is to be taken in account for the tempo, for the articulation, for the precision, for the kind of sound image or soundscape that you dream to produce through the effects that Debussy creates through this fantastically fun piece to play. Challenging, jubilant, but ultimately fun in the sense of uplifting the spirit. Thank you.